Serum 2 is finally here. And if you came onto YouTube looking for all the things that are brand new in Serum 2, you're in the right place. We're about to do a deep dive into every single thing you need to know. So open your DAW and get ready for some sound design. Let's do it. Shout out to Steve Duda and the xfer Records team for always having my back, giving me early access to the synth so I can really give you guys a deep breakdown of what's new, what's amazing, and all of the awesome features. Let's get right to it. The first thing I want to go over are the surface level changes that you'll notice immediately. I imagine you're familiar with Serum 1, so I'm just going to assume you are for the rest of the video. Serum 2 has a new oscillator. So now we have access to A, B, and C. Within these oscillators are different oscillator types. Serum 1 only had Wavetable. Now we have access to multisample, sample, granular, and spectral modes. We'll get into those in a deep dive later. If we look to the bottom half of the synth, you'll notice that we have more macros, more envelopes, and more LFOs. That means more control. We have an additional 4 macros now, so a total of 8 macros to fully customize our patches. We've got 4 envelopes and 6 LFOs, and so many new ways to manipulate those LFOs. I mean, just look at this. What? Try not to get sidetracked here. Another new feature on the main page is the clip view. To summarize the clip view, it's like having your own piano roll and almost your own DAW within Serum itself. There's a lot of really interesting import and export and MIDI manipulation features within this module. Next up, we finally have an ARP built into the synth. All different types of options, presets, patterns, transpositions, different playback methods, and retriggering. We're also able to lock our notes into a key and even a scale. Well, a lot of scales. Let's head over into the effects. We got a brand new look here, and it's awesome. We're able to add different effects modules just from this effects button here. And you can see there's some new effects as well, like Bode, Convolve, 3 different splitters, and a utility. There's a lot of really interesting quality of life additions as well. Like I can hold down Alt and duplicate this effect as many times as I want. The possibilities for creative sound design here are basically limitless. Once I've created an effects chain that I like, it's very easy to hit this button and save it. There's also a new routing system through buses. I can click on bus 1, add an effect, head back over to the oscillator view. Click on F1 by the wavetable here, and you can see that we have access to bus 1 and 2 knobs, which means that I can run any effect I want in parallel. This will be super handy for things like reverb and delay, other time-based effects, even mixing tools like parallel compression and distortion. Serum 2 is kind of starting to feel like a DAW. The last main tab I want to cover is the mix tab. We're able to control volume here, as well as bus processing and even routing. So if I don't want this to go to main, say I want it to run just through the filter, then that's easy to do. Then I could enable my filter and send it wherever I want, like direct out for something clean, or to a second filter for even deeper processing. I'm imagining 2 crazy oscillator patches, and then on oscillator C, I've got some granular thing that I can just run direct out without having it go through my processing chain. The sounds in this synth are going to get really, really, really powerful. Let's head into the content library. The preset browser has a new look. To me on the left side here, this is way more user-friendly, where I can search by categories or by tags and give my own presets their own tags. We can also hit this play button to preview presets. There's also a bunch of awesome, random, kind of hidden features. Like if we open up the settings tab, I can hit 7 and just load a random preset. This could be really cool to up your workflow. So that's it for all the big overall changes. It's time to dig in. Let's dig into the new oscillator types. So we've got Wavetable, Multisample, Sample, Granular, and Spectral. Let's first talk about Multisample. Multisample is really cool because it allows you to load your own SFZ files. What is an SFZ file, you ask? An SFZ file is a plain text file that defines how a sampler should play back audio samples. So basically, it's a way to create your own multi-sample instruments. You can go on GitHub or Reddit and find people's SFZ files that they've made and load them in now. All I have to do that is click here and go to Load SFZ. I've got this Northern Trumpets SFZ that I found on GitHub. Once it's loaded in, you can see that it's broken down into all the different recordings. There we go. So if you've gone really deep and created your own multi-sample instruments, you can now use them in Serum 2. But in addition to that, look at all the different preset multi-sample banks that they have. This layout and view and choice of options kind of reminds me of a synth like Nexus or even Omnisphere. Let's test out a few presets. Beautiful choirs. This is with zero effects as well. How about the strings? I mean, come on. That sounds outrageous. Plus, you've got access to all the different warp modes that Serum 1's Wavetable oscillator had before, plus all the new warp modes. But I'm not ready to talk about all the new warp modes yet. Let's keep going. The next oscillator type is sample. This one's pretty straightforward. It's a sampler. Let's grab an audio file here, and let's just drag it in. By default, we're on one-shot mode, but we can do forward loop, forward reverse loop, tailed, and a bunch of other ones. If we don't like where the sample starts or end, we have user adjustable loop start and end points. We can just grab and drag. Say I wanted to make a pad out of the end of this audio file. I can just drag this section here, turn this to maybe forward reverse, maybe add some voices. Then we can add some reverb. Maybe some delay. And we've got a gorgeous pad in about 10 seconds. Sampler mode, let's go. Next up, we've got the granular oscillator mode. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a sucker for granular synthesis. I think it sounds so unique, it's so fun, and it's also really easy, and you get all these really cool happy accidents. Granular synthesis is the best because it's easy. And easy when it comes to sound design doesn't come around that often. Let's find a cool loop to drag in here. Whoa. Fire. So we've got access to the things you need when you're doing granular synthesis, like scan, density, length, random, pitch, the direction, offset, so many controls. This oscillator lets you play through audio samples with up to 256 grains. Just a quick tip on how to use granular synthesis. Don't think about it. You can drag in whole songs, drum loops, synth loops, one-shots, it doesn't matter. You get all of these creative results just from messing around. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to experiment with this. The fact that we can do this in Serum now is so, so fun. Last but certainly not least, we have Spectral mode. What exactly is Spectral mode, you ask? Let me pull up Serum's 500-page manual and read you a little bit about Spectral mode. Spectral synthesis mode generates sound by analyzing and manipulating the frequency spectrum of a sound, breaking it down into its individual frequency components or partials. Unlike other synthesis methods that operate directly on the waveform, spectral synthesis focuses on the harmonic and inharmonic content, allowing for precise control over the timbre and evolution of sound. By altering specific frequency bands, adding or removing harmonics, or even shifting spectral content over time, this approach can create complex, evolving textures that can range from natural, acoustic-like tones to entirely synthetic soundscapes. Bam! Spectral mode is cracked. Like most of the other modes, you can drag in whatever you want here. Let's drag in that same loop. So as you mess with the scan rate, when you get into the negatives, you're going in reverse. Obviously, in the positives, you're going forward. And just like sampler mode, you've got access to one-shot, forward loop, reverse loop, etc. Let's ham up an LFO real quick. What if we put that LFO onto the scan? Whoa, got lost there a little bit. This is rad. When you right click on the spectral waveform, you get access to some of the things that we used to have in the wavetable editing mode, like fade edges, normalize, trim, things like that. Let's bring this y-axis down. So cool. We're able to cut harmonics with a brand new approach, almost like a visual EQ, low cut and high cut, but it's so much deeper than that. And just like the other modes, we have access to factory banks. Let's go into piano. Breathy piano-ish. This feels really fresh and unique to me, and something I'm not that used to. I think a lot of FL users will be used to this view, and producers who are super nerdy about frequency spectrums. But if you're experimenting with this type of thing for the first time, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. So that's all the different wavetable modes. Let's keep going. It's time to talk about the thing we know and love the most, wavetable mode. It's funny calling it wavetable mode because that was the mode we had in Serum 1. Now we have so many other ones, we've just got to call it wavetable mode. There's a lot of new things to go over, and I thought the coolest way to do it would be to just make some patches on the fly. So let's do that. I want to dive into the Serum 2 wavetables. Let's start with analog. We're just going to pick a random one here. Whenever I'm experimenting and learning about new wavetables, I love to automate the wavetable position. I think that's a great way to find out what the wavetable does and assume whether it's a tonal wavetable, it changes pitch, it's growly, vowely, simple, complex. This is the way I like to do it. Let's make a very simple shape with LFO1 here, just so we can scan through and find out what's going on. As expected, these analog wavetables are mostly variants of basic shapes. And if you know what's up with basic shapes, you know basic shapes are the best. Interesting. So this wavetable is in cycles, right? These are aggressive changes when you change the wavetable position. It's not smooth, right? Like if I automate this, that's a staggering change. I want to show you something that's brand new and really awesome. Say we wanted to make the wavetable transition smooth. Right now it isn't. All we have to do is right click on wavetable position and click smooth interpolation. Some of you may remember this from the wavetable editor in Serum 1. Now it's built right into the wavetable position knob. Now, when we scan through the wavetable position, it's not jagged anymore. It's nice and smooth. This is such a sweet quality of life thing. Let's move on. Interesting. Some of these analog wavetables are just one cycle. No changes. But when I look at this wavetable shape, this looks like the best sub I've ever seen in my life. I can just hear it. Nice and clean, but a little bit more complex than a simple sine wave. This is the type of thing that I love to use for sub bass. Let's activate oscillator B and do some FM from B, because everyone loves FM from B. The first thing I notice when I go to click on FM from B is that we now have two warp modes. Back in the day, you would have FM from B and nothing else, or bend plus minus and nothing else. Now we have a slew of combinations that we can use. Let's activate FM from B. Turn on the level of oscillator B. We can use the same knob to modulate the FM. Let's bump up the octave of oscillator B. And let's activate the second warp mode. Why not? So here I want to talk about all the new warp modes. So when you go into alt warp, you'll see a lot of the familiar ones. Bend, bend minus, bend plus minus, asim, flip, mirror. Some new ones are quantize and odd and even. But there's so many more new ones now. We have a low pass filter and a high pass filter. We have distortion, which includes all the distortion modules from the distortion effect, tube, diode, zero square, all that stuff. We have our traditional FM. Now we can FM from filters, which is really cool. We have PD, which stands for phase distortion. Phase distortion is something I really only enjoyed accessing in a synth like Phase Plant, but now we've got it in Serum too. Then we have AM and RM. Let's try distortion. That's pretty cool. You can visually see what the distortion is doing to the wavetable. In a sine waves example, distortion oftentimes will change a sine wave to a square wave, and that's exactly what's happening here. Let's try sync. Everyone loves sync. Get some nice harmonics there. Let's modulate it. Not bad for zero effects. As soon as we add distortion to this thing, it's going to start to go off. And we still have access to unison amounts, detune, blend, and pan. Inside the unison module now, we have access to the settings though. So different modes, stacks, width, and range. You might remember this from the global tab in Serum 1. It's now built into the individual oscillators. All right, there's two things left that I want to talk about with Wavetable mode. The first one is setting the phase memory. This arrow here will open up a menu that says contiguous, per voice, or all voices. Phase memory specifies how phase and phase randomization should be determined for new notes. So for all voices, which is default, new notes use the phase and random control settings for all voices. For contiguous, new notes continue with the phase of the previous note, and with per voice, new note starts with the same phase each time. Lastly, we have two new ways for editing the tuning. If we right-click on semitone, we see this mode drop-down menu, which gives us access to harmonics, ratio, and semitones. Semitones is default. If we go to harmonics, we can change the harmonics. And if we go to ratio, it changes the tuning based off frequency. We've got a lot of control here. All right, that's it for Wavetable mode. Let's talk about filters and what's new. Let's turn on filter 1. So as expected, you can route these wherever you want. I've got this patch here routed to A and B. We can use an LFO to modulate the cutoff just to see what's really going on here. And with the new C oscillator, we can route it towards C as well. But we're not using C, so no need. Just like with the oscillators, we can route these filters through bus effects. We can also change the destination of where the filter is going. So if we don't want this to go right to main, we can have it go towards filter 2, direct out, and then none. The main thing I want to talk about with filters is all the new filters. WSP, DJ Mixer, Diffuser, y'all can read the list. They're bomb. Let's go over every single one and what it does. Starting with WSP. WSP is a circuit model of a classic synth filter. You can see it looks like a low-pass filter, but we have access to this morph knob. The morph knob blends between low-pass filter, notch, and high-pass filter. So automating this could yield some really cool results. The next new filter is the DJ Mixer. This is awesome. As a DJ, I love this. This is basically just the xfer freeware DJM filter built in to Serum 2. Next up, we have the Diffuser. The Diffuser is so cool. It's an all-pass diffuser stage for making things sound phasey and blurry in a really cool way. Kind of reminds me of the way the reverb filter or Combs filters kind of makes things feel messy a little bit and aggressive. But it sounds kind of like disperser. Let's take off the stages here. Really bendy and stretchy and really unique sounding. I have a feeling that this might become the new meta, but don't quote me on it. Next up is the MG ladder. This is just a circuit model of the classic transistor ladder filter. This smooth knob will slow the rate at which the cutoff is modulated. Next up, we have the acid ladder. The acid ladder is a circuit model of the diode ladder, really famous in acid music. The smooth rate here does the same thing, where it slows the rate at which the cutoff is modulated. Next up, we have MG Dirty, which is the MG ladder, but all the distortion is there and you're overdriving the circuit. There's this interesting pain knob here. This is what it says in the manual. The pain knob is how far you're holding a lighter from the circuit board. This is physically correct, not a joke. Crazy. Okay, that just exploded my computer. Whoa, crazy results there. Next up, we have PZSVF, where we can draw our own filters. We can click this pen tool. We can draw our own filters using what looks like a multi-band EQ. Super cool. Love this. Next up, we have Comb 2. Next up, we have the EXP-MM, which has this cool mix knob, which feels a little bit like a morph knob as well. And lastly, we have EXP-BPF, which is a bandpass filter. And the output is from the classic synthesizer expander module. Another new feature with filters is that we can right-click on the graph here, and we can have different display options. So we can change it from frequency response to frequency response NFFT or phase response NFFT. These were in Serum 1, but we can now control them. That's filters. Let's move on to the new things in the bottom half of the synth, starting with the LFOs. The LFOs have a new and updated look, and there's so many more controls. Let's get into it. We have 6 LFOs displayed by default. You can modify the LFO graph just by dragging and moving your mouse. Something new here are these shapes. We have points, a flat line, and 2 different angled lines. If we draw a flat line, we can drag across and get these shapes. Same thing applies to these ramps and the ramp going the other way. This kind of reminds me of the OG Massive, which I love. You can select this box in the top right corner to edit your LFO shape even further. In this view, we have access to presets, and we can also save our own shapes. Dope. Let's quickly highlight some LFO hotkeys so you can improve your workflow. Say you've got an LFO with a bunch of points here. We can drag in the background to select multiple points and drag them to arrange them in different unique ways. Hold Alt and drag a point on Windows, or hold Option and drag a point, and you can move all curves at once. Sweet. Right-clicking will display a pop-up menu showing additional features, like setting the segment shape for Shift-click, removing all selected points, or assigning the start and loopback points. When you're in envelope mode, you can Shift-Control-click or Shift-Command-click to set your loopback point. You can see it's displayed with an L here. That's a few little hotkeys. Another new feature are the LFO types. We have normal, path, chaos Lorenz, crazy, chaos Rossler, or sample and hold. When you're in path mode, you can select points and draw what feels like almost 3-dimensional LFOs. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but visually, this is extremely satisfying. Here's what Chaos Lorenz sounds like when you drag the LFO onto the level of a simple init patch. This fluttering randomization will be so cool for things like pads and atmospheres. How about Rossler? Super creative and so satisfying to just look at. Here's a fun little bass patch I made. The LFOs now have a direction that they can go. So by default, they will be in forward. But we can put it to reverse or ping pong. So cool. It's like we have double the length of the LFO or something like that. I'm going to be using this mode a lot. The last thing I want to show you about LFOs is we can now take our wavetable shapes and turn them into LFO shapes very easily. So down here where it says custom, first off, we have so many different presets. This is great. But we can select wavetable A, B, or C to LFO. Let's take this oomph wavetable that I'm using on oscillator A and make it the LFO. Okay. Let's slow it down a little bit. This may not be the best use case for something like this, but any sort of patch that you might want to be scattered and random, this is a great way to do it. Introducing randomization into the sound design process is an awesome way to keep things fresh and unique. Lastly, we can do the opposite, where we can take an LFO shape and turn it into a wavetable. All you have to do is draw the wavetable of your choice, and then Option drag on Mac, or Alt drag on Windows to the corresponding LFO. And there we go. Love how fresh and new this feels. Next big thing to talk about is the clip view. We can activate the clip view in the bottom left. Serum 2 has this versatile and fun to use clip module that you can use to create, fine-tune, and play a series of MIDI clips directly within the synth. We have 12 clip modules to choose from, so we have 12 different options for every single preset that we have. So I've selected one here. We can edit the clip length, span, we can transpose the notes, these different modes, different times, quantization, and different playback methods. We also have access to all these different presets. Pseudo chords, neo chords, drum patterns, guitar patterns, and a lot more. I thought a fun way to show you all the clip view would be to just write and experiment with it. Down here, we can select our key and our scale, and it will highlight the notes for us. Let's try E minor. Let's start with an E minor chord. We can drag, duplicate. We can control drag. Make a new chord. So we want this to loop. Let's make it 4 bars. Pretty basic, but it works. I'm going to shrink down Serum real quick. Because what I can do is just drag this clip into my DAW. And look, I've got the MIDI for it already. So awesome. Let's open up a preset. Here we have the Deep Seashell Mallet preset. But let's look into the clip view. This preset comes loaded with the clip. Let's listen to it by hitting the play button. Do you hear how much movement is in this clip? That's because you can add macro automation into the clip view. So below our MIDI notes, we see velocity, relative velocity, macro 3, macro 4, and you can see that there are automation lanes. Let's get out of the clip view and see what macro 3 is. So macro 3 says deeper. Seems to adjust the dry wet of the reverb. Clip view paired with the automations in the clip view, paired with the macros, really advances the level of detail that we can build into presets in our patches. I'm definitely going to need to make an entire video just on the clip view, but I wanted to give you all the breakdown. Next up, we have the Arpeggiator. The Serum Arpeggiator is a versatile, full-featured arpeggiator designed to effortlessly sequence the notes of a chord into rhythmic patterns, enabling you to create dynamic, flowing musical phrases with ease. It's really nice to have this feature in Serum 2. I was missing it in Serum 1. I know you could do it with LFOs and pitch modulation, but this just makes it really simple and straightforward. Using the global pane will allow you to set parameters that affects all aspects of the arpeggiator. Use the pattern pane to set the shape of the currently selected ARP slot. So like the clip view, we have 12 ARP slots. These also directly interact with the clip view. Let's check out a global preset. As soon as we enable this global preset, 12 new clips pop up, or arpeggiator clips. We can go through and audition these just by hitting the playhead. We can use the playback pane to specify the playback settings, including offsets, repeats, length of the gate, and probability for note changes. The re-trigger pane allows us to access launch, rate, and note. which specify how the arpeggiator retriggers the arp shape. You can also specify the rate at which the arpeggiator is retriggered. Lastly, all the way to the right, we have the velocity pane. We can configure the arpeggiator to raise or lower the arpeggiator note output velocity. So we can mess with the decay and the target and create a bunch of unique results through this. And like we did in the clip view, we can also add our key and our scale to keep us locked in. So that's the front of the synth. We made it through, so much to do. We still got the noise oscillator as well, and we still have the sub oscillator, but I want to keep moving. All right, let's pop over to the effects view. We're going to go over everything that's new. I want to go over all the new effects and the new features in the effects tab. So let's start by going over the new effects. First up, we have Bode. Bode is a frequency shifter. Dubstep kids are going to love this one. Another new effect is Convolve. This is convolution, one of the most powerful effects in music production. We can scan through presets here. What you're hearing right now is just an init saw wave. Unique textures. We can also drag and drop our own impulse responses. This is an acoustic snare drum. Let's go. Another new effect are these splitters. So splitter low-high, splitter low-mid-high, and splitter mid-side. So with this splitter low-high, we can select lows or highs, and whatever happens below this effect will only happen to the selected frequencies. In the middle, we can select our crossover frequency. So say I just wanted to add a frequency shifter to the high end. You can hear that our low end is preserved and our high end is being frequency shifted. This is amazing. Same thing goes with splitter MS. A very common mid-side EQ thing is to cut the low end out of the sides. We can easily do that now. We just go to side, we select our EQ, and we can select a low cut. Boom. No more phasing in your low end. Let's give this patch some voices, and let's add some stereo width to the sides. We can use hyperdimension. Maybe we detune it a little bit. Our mono signal is preserved, and our side signal is being affected. This is so powerful and awesome. If we want to save this, we just hit the floppy disk and we can save our effect chains. Next big feature as far as effects goes are these buses. So now we can run effects in parallel. In the bus view, we have bus processing presets. Down the well, let's try that. To mix in this bus effect, we can go to the oscillator view. And by the word Wavetable where it says F1, we click on that, you can see that we have access to the bus amounts. So we're on bus 1, let's increase this effect. It performs just like a bus should perform. We're able to maintain our original sound while adding an effect in parallel alongside it. Another place where we can mess with our buses is in our next topic, which is the mixing tab. The mix panel is exactly what it is. You're able to mix your channels individually, whether it's volume, effects, sends, or routing. You can do it all here. All the things that we've done to this patch already are labeled here. You can see bus 1, all the effects that are on here. If I want to bypass a reverb from the bus, I can. If I want to send the bus instead of going to the main, maybe it goes direct out or towards the second bus. We can do it here. We've got access to a lot of the controls that we see in the oscillator view, but in this mix tab as well. For example, I can take my sub oscillator and select main and send it direct out. I can route my filter to somewhere else as well. If my filter is too hot, I can turn down the filter level. I can pan my filter. Say we've got oscillator B and C engaged, we can change the volumes here. This envelope shape here allows us to decide whether or not this oscillator runs through envelope 1. If you don't know, envelope 1 is your global envelope. So if I change envelope 1 to a pluck shape, the whole synth is going to become a pluck. But if we wanted to have oscillator C, skip envelope 1 in its global envelope, just click this button and it's free to work on its own. Serum 2 has turned into an extremely strong standalone plugin. We can do so much within the DAW itself. We can do so much within the synth itself that we have to leave it less and less, and I think that's what makes a great synth. When I open up a new synth, I'm making a new sound, Oftentimes in the past, I've been like, all right, cool. I've hit my limit in the synth. I've got to go to post-processing. I don't feel that way with Serum 2. I'm feeling like I'm staying within the synth itself a whole lot longer just because of all these new tools. So that's my overview of all the new features in Serum 2. There's a few things I didn't cover, like Wavetable Editor and a deep dive into the preset menu, but I'm going to save those for another video. I hope you enjoyed this. Shout out one more time to Steve Duda and the xfer Records team for allowing me early access to this incredible synth. And if you want to learn more from me or my team at Futureproof, head to our website, futureproofmusicschool.com, and start your 7-day free trial today. I'll see you guys in the next video.